How many times have you started over? You know the feeling. January comes around, or maybe it's a Monday or your birthday or just some random Tuesday where something clicks. And you tell yourself, this time is different. You write the goal down. You feel the fire in your chest. You make the plan, maybe even buy the journal or download the app. And for a little while, it works. You're moving, you're showing up, and then life happens. A hard week, a rough conversation, a night where you're just too tired to care, and slowly, quietly, without any dramatic moment, you drift back. The goal sits there, untouched, and instead of feeling motivated, you feel something worse. You feel like the problem is you. But here's what I need you to hear right now, before anything else. You are not the problem, the system is, or more accurately, the lack of one. Because goals without systems are just wishes wearing a deadline. And no matter how much you want something, wanting alone will never be enough to carry you through the hard days. What carries you through is structure. What carries you through is repetition. What carries you through is a system so well built that even on your worst days it keeps you moving forward. Not because you feel like it, but because it's simply what you do. That's what this is about. Not hype. Not a 30-day challenge. Not another motivational speech that leaves you pumped for 48 hours and then fades. This is about building something real. Something that fits your actual life, your energy, your schedule, your season. Something that doesn't require you to be perfect or passionate every single day. Something that works even when you don't feel like working. If you're tired of starting over, keep going. Because by the time we're done, you won't just have a new plan. You'll have a new way of living. Chapter 1. Choose actions that match the life you actually want. Here's a question most people never really sit with. What kind of life do I actually want? Not the surface answer, not the Instagram version, not the answer you'd give to impress someone. The real answer, the one that lives in the quiet part of your chest, the one you think about late at night when everything else is finally still. Because here's the thing, most of us have a very clear picture of the life we want. We can describe it in detail. We know how we want to feel when we wake up. We know the kind of relationships we want, the kind of work, the kind of body, the kind of bank account, the kind of peace. We know what we want. What we don't always see is the gap between what we want and what we actually do every single day. And that gap, that distance between your vision and your behavior, that's where all the frustration lives. The invisible vote. Think of every action you take during the day as a vote, not a dramatic vote, not a conscious declaration, just a quiet, small vote, for or against the person you're trying to become. When you reach for your phone, the second you wake up, instead of giving yourself 5 minutes of stillness, that's a vote. When you skip the workout because you're tired but then scroll for an hour, that's a vote. When you eat something that makes your body feel heavy because it's just easier, that's a vote. None of these moments feel like big decisions. They rarely do, but they add up. Every single day they add up. And over weeks, over months, over years, they build a life. The question is just, which life? Here's what I've seen in person after person who finally breaks through the cycle of starting over. They didn't change by suddenly finding more willpower. They didn't have some magical breakthrough moment. What they did was simpler and much harder. They started paying attention to the gap between what they said they wanted and what they actually chose. They got honest with themselves, and then they started closing the gap, one small action at a time. Why goals aren't enough. Let's talk about goals for a second, because they're not the enemy. Goals give you direction. They tell you where you're trying to go, and there's nothing wrong with having them. The problem is when we treat the goal as the destination, when we think that writing it down or deciding on it is the hard part, because it's not. The hard part is the Tuesday afternoon when you're tired and stressed and nobody's watching, and you have to choose between what's easy and what's aligned. That's where systems come in. A goal says, I want to be healthier. A system says, every morning before I check my phone, I drink a full glass of water, take a 10-minute walk, and eat something that actually fuels me. A goal says, I want to be better with money. A system says, every Sunday evening, I spend 15 minutes reviewing my week's spending and moving a set amount into savings. No exceptions. See the difference? The goal is the destination. The system is the road you walk every day to get there. And here's the truth. You can reach your destination without ever consciously thinking about it, if your system is strong enough. But you can set the same goal 100 times and never arrive, if your daily actions keep pulling you in a different direction. The two worlds problem. Most people live in two separate worlds simultaneously, and they don't even realize it. The first world is the world of their imagination. It's where they see the life they want, the healthy version of themselves, the peaceful home, the fulfilling work, the confident presence. It's a beautiful world, vivid and full of possibility. The second world is the world of their habits. It's where they actually spend their time. The scrolling, the avoiding, the comfort eating, the saying yes when they mean no, the putting off until tomorrow. When those two worlds don't match, something quietly corrosive happens. Frustration builds. Not the loud, explosive kind, the slow, grinding kind. The kind that makes you feel behind. The kind that makes you wonder what's wrong with you. But nothing's wrong with you. You've just been living in World 1 while building World 2. And those two worlds are drifting further apart every single day you don't address the gap. The fix isn't to dream bigger. The fix is to behave differently. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just differently enough, consistently enough, that your habits start building the world you actually want to live in. Start where you are, not where you wish you were. One of the most liberating things I can tell you is this. You don't need to overhaul your entire life to start moving in the right direction. You just need to ask one question every day as honestly as you can. Does what I'm about to do match the life I say I want? That's it. That's the whole system in its most distilled form. If you want peace, maybe the next aligned action is putting your phone in another room for an hour. Not forever, just for an hour. If you want strength, physical, mental, emotional, maybe the next aligned action is getting up and moving your body for 10 minutes. Not a full workout, not a new fitness plan, just 10 minutes of movement that reminds your body what it's capable of. If you want financial stability, maybe the next aligned action is sitting down with your numbers, not to fix everything at once, but just to look, to stop avoiding, to bring what's hidden into the light. Small, aligned, repeated. That's the formula. It's not going to feel dramatic. It's not going to feel like a transformation montage from a movie. But over time, over real, honest, consistent time, it starts to feel like something better than dramatic. It starts to feel like home. Direction over intensity. Here's something that took me a long time to understand. Progress isn't about how hard you push. It's about which direction you're pointed. You can run at full speed in the wrong direction and end up more lost than when you started. But if you walk slowly, steadily, consistently, in the right direction, you will eventually arrive somewhere that changes your life. The people who genuinely transform their lives are rarely the ones who go hardest. They're the ones who go longest. They're the ones who build a system that keeps them pointed in the right direction even when their energy is low, even when their enthusiasm has faded, even when life has gotten complicated. They built something that holds. And that's what we're building here, together, not a sprint, a life, not a 30-day challenge, a system, not goals you'll forget by February, actions you'll still be doing 3 years from now, not because you have to, but because they've become who you are. And that's where the real power lives, not in the declaration, in the daily. Chapter 2. Build patterns that feel natural, not forced. Let's be honest about something that most productivity advice gets completely wrong. Most of it is built around the idea that if you just try hard enough, if you just want it badly enough, you'll be able to force yourself into any habit, any routine, any system. Wake up at 4 a.m., cold showers, hour-long journaling sessions, meal prep every Sunday without fail, 3 workouts before the rest of the world has had breakfast. And maybe some of that works for some people, maybe. But for most of us, forcing habits that don't fit our actual lives doesn't create discipline. It creates resistance. And resistance, left long enough, turns into avoidance. And avoidance turns into the quiet story we tell ourselves. I guess I'm just not a disciplined person. But that story isn't true. You're not undisciplined. You've just been trying to wear someone else's system, and it doesn't fit. The hidden cost of borrowed systems. Here's something worth sitting with. Every time you've tried to copy someone else's morning routine, someone else's diet, someone else's productivity method, and it fell apart after 2 weeks, it wasn't because you were weak. It was because you were trying to build your life on someone else's blueprint. And the foundation was never yours to begin with. Think about it. You've seen the viral YouTube videos, the 5 a.m. routines, the cold plunges, the 2-hour morning blocks of reading and meditation and journaling and exercise before anyone else has opened their eyes. And something in you thinks, if I could just do that, everything would change. So you try. You set the alarm. You force yourself up. You push through the grogginess and the resistance and the voice in your head saying, this isn't you. And for a few days, maybe even a week, you do it. And then you crash. Not because you're lazy, because you were running on borrowed fuel in a car that wasn't built for that kind of road. The people whose routines you're admiring, they didn't start there either. They built their way there, slowly, through trial and error, through paying attention to what actually worked for them. And even if their system is genuine, it grew out of their specific biology, their specific schedule, their specific season of life. Your system has to grow out of yours. Self-awareness is the starting point. Before you build anything new, You need to look honestly at what's already there, not to judge it, not to criticize yourself for where you are, just to understand it. Because you can't build a system on top of a life you don't understand. So start with some simple questions, honest ones. Sit with them. When do you feel most alive and focused during the day? Maybe it's that quiet hour in the morning before the house wakes up. Maybe it's late evening when everything finally settles. Maybe it's mid-afternoon, right after lunch, when your mind kicks into a different gear. What part of your day do you consistently waste? Not because you're lazy, but because there's no structure there, no anchor, just an open stretch of time that gets swallowed by whatever's loudest. What do you already do every day without being told? Because that, whatever that is your starting point. That's the behavior you build around. That's the thread you pull. Maybe you always make coffee at the same time. That moment becomes your trigger for reviewing your priorities. Maybe you always take a walk after dinner. That walk becomes your thinking time, your decompression, your daily reset. Maybe you always check your phone first thing. Okay, that habit already exists. What if you just shifted it slightly? What if, before the phone, there were 2 minutes of something that actually served you? You don't always need to add more. Sometimes you just need to attach meaning to what's already there. The ease principle. Here's something that changed how I think about habits entirely. If it doesn't feel like you won't keep it. Not if it doesn't feel easy. Hard things can feel like you. Challenges can feel like you. Getting up and doing the work on a difficult morning can absolutely feel like you, if it's aligned with who you are. But if a habit feels foreign, performative, or like you're playing a role in someone else's story, you'll drop it every time. And then you'll feel guilty for dropping it, which makes the next attempt even harder. The goal isn't to make your system easy. The goal is to make it yours. When something is genuinely aligned with who you are, when it fits your energy, your values, your natural rhythms, it carries a completely different feeling. It still requires effort, but the effort feels purposeful. It feels like you're building something, not fighting something. That's the difference between a system that lasts and one that collapses under the first wave of a difficult week. Finding your natural rhythm. Not everyone is a morning person, and that's not a character flaw. It's just a fact about how different human bodies and brains operate. Some people's minds are sharpest at sunrise. Others don't hit their full stride until afternoon. Others do their best thinking at night, in the quiet, when the world has gone still. The key is knowing which one you are, and then designing your most important work around that window, not against it. If your mind is clearest in the morning, protect that time fiercely. Keep it free from noise and obligation. Use it for the work that matters most. If you're an afternoon person, stop trying to force deep focus sessions at 7 a.m. just because someone on the internet said that's when successful people work. Schedule your most demanding tasks for when your brain is actually ready for them. If evenings are your golden hour, lean into it. Create an environment that supports that. Quiet space, low distraction, a clear mind from having wrapped up the day's smaller tasks. This isn't about giving yourself permission to be lazy. It's about being smart with the energy you have. Because when you work with your natural rhythm instead of against it, you get more done with less friction. and you feel better doing it. That's not a small thing. That's the difference between a sustainable system and one that burns you out. Patterns that evolve with you. Here's something important that a lot of people miss when they're thinking about building routines. The system isn't supposed to be permanent. It's supposed to be alive. What works for you at 24 might not work at 34. What works when you're single might need to shift when you have a partner, a child, a new job, a move, a loss, a change in health. Life is not static, and your system can't be either. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. The goal is not to build a routine you stick to forever unchanged, no matter what happens in your life. The goal is to build the skill of building routines so that as your life evolves, you can evolve your system with it. Think of it less like a rigid structure and more like a living framework. Something that has enough shape to guide you, but enough flexibility to bend without breaking when life inevitably gets complicated. Maybe every 6 months, you sit down and review what's working and what isn't. Maybe you notice that a habit you built 2 years ago no longer serves the person you become, and you let it go without guilt. Maybe you discover a new practice that fits this season of your life perfectly, and you fold it in gently without trying to overhaul everything at once. Small adjustments, consistent attention, ongoing care. That's how a system lasts not just months, but years. Anchors, not alarms. One of the most practical things you can do when building natural patterns is to stop relying on alarms, reminders, and apps to trigger your habits, and start using anchors instead. An anchor is something you already do consistently, attached to something you want to build. Already brush your teeth every morning? Attach your 2-minute intention setting to that moment. Already eat lunch at roughly the same time? Use that transition, the 5 minutes before you eat, to check in with your priorities for the afternoon. Already wind down before bed? Attach a 5-minute reflection practice to that existing ritual. Anchors work because they piggyback on existing behavior. They don't require you to create new momentum from scratch every day. The momentum already exists. You're just redirecting a little of it. Over time, these anchored behaviors stop feeling like habits you're doing and start feeling like things you just are. They become part of the texture of your day, part of your identity. And when that happens, when the habit stops being something you do and starts being something you are, consistency stops being a struggle. It just becomes how you live. Gentle, not rigid. I want to leave this chapter with something important because I think it gets lost in a lot of conversations about habits and discipline. Be gentle with yourself in this process. Not soft, not permissive, gentle. There's a difference. Being soft means letting yourself off the hook every time it gets hard. Being gentle means holding yourself accountable with compassion, understanding that building a new pattern takes time, that setbacks are not failures, that the occasional missed day doesn't undo the work you've done. Rigid systems break. Gentle, flexible, self-aware systems bend and then come back stronger. You're not trying to become a machine. You're trying to become a more intentional version of yourself. And that version of you is still human, still imperfect, still figuring things out as they go. The system you're building is not a cage. It's a compass. It doesn't trap you. It guides you back to yourself, back to what matters, back to the life you're working so hard to build. Trust the process. Build with care and give yourself the grace to be a work in progress, because that's exactly what you are. And that's exactly enough. Chapter 3. Remove pressure by focusing only on today. Can I tell you something that might feel a little uncomfortable? Most of the stress you're carrying right now, the weight sitting on your shoulders, the low hum of anxiety that follows you through your day, it's not coming from your actual life. It's coming from the version of your life that exists only in your head. The future you haven't lived yet. The past you can't change. The endless mental simulation of every possible outcome, every potential failure, every what if that your brain runs on a loop at 2 a.m. when you should be sleeping. You're not overwhelmed by today. You're overwhelmed by every day all at once. And here's the truth that changes everything when you finally let it sink in. You only have to handle today, not the next 5 years, not next month, not even tomorrow, just this day, these hours, this moment. That's it. That's the whole assignment. And when you actually let yourself believe that, when you stop trying to solve your entire life in a single afternoon, something remarkable happens. The pressure doesn't just decrease, it lifts. And in that space where the pressure used to live, something else moves in. Clarity, focus, the quiet, grounded feeling of knowing exactly what needs your attention right now. That feeling is available to you every single day, but you have to choose it deliberately. The weight we carry, that was never ours to hold. Imagine for a moment that you're carrying a backpack, and every morning when you wake up, before you've even had your first cup of coffee, you reach into that backpack and you start loading it up. In goes yesterday's mistakes, the conversation that didn't go the way you hoped, the task you didn't finish, the thing you said that you wish you hadn't. In goes next week's deadlines, the bill that's coming, the difficult conversation you've been avoiding, the goal you feel like you're falling behind on. In goes next year's uncertainty, the career question you haven't answered, the relationship dynamic you haven't resolved, the version of your life you're not sure you'll ever actually reach. By the time you walk out the door, that backpack is so heavy you can barely move, and you wonder why you feel exhausted by noon. Here's the thing. Most of what's in that backpack isn't yours to carry today. Yesterday is done. You can't go back and change it. Next week isn't here yet. You can't solve problems that don't exist in front of you right now. The future is built one day at a time, and the only day you can actually build is this one. So what would happen if you set the backpack down? What would it feel like to walk through your day carrying only what today actually requires? Lighter, clearer, more present, more capable of handling the things that are actually in front of you. That's not avoidance. That's not naive optimism. That's focus. And focus is one of the most powerful tools you have. The anxiety of living in multiple directions at once. Here's something worth understanding about anxiety. It almost always lives in the gap between the present moment and somewhere else. When your mind is in the past, replaying what went wrong, you feel guilt and regret. When your mind is in the future, projecting what might go wrong, you feel fear and dread. But when your mind is genuinely here, in this room, in this conversation, in this task, anxiety struggles to find a foothold. This isn't spiritual philosophy. This is practical psychology. The more you can train yourself to bring your attention back to the present, Not perfectly, not permanently, but consistently, the less power anxiety has over your daily life. And the less power anxiety has, the more energy you have for the things that actually matter. But let's be real. Living in the present moment is not something most of us were ever taught to do. We were taught to plan, to anticipate, to think 3 steps ahead. And those skills have their place. They're genuinely useful for building a better life. The problem is when planning becomes ruminating, when anticipating becomes catastrophizing, when thinking ahead becomes a full-time occupation that leaves no room for actually living the life you're planning so hard for. The balance you're looking for isn't between planning and presence. It's between healthy foresight and present moment action. You can have a vision for your future and still be fully here today. In fact, the people who build the most meaningful futures are usually the ones who are most present in their daily lives, because they understand that the future is built from today's, not from anxious anticipation of it. One question that changes everything. If there's one question I'd invite you to ask yourself every single morning, before you check your phone, before you look at your calendar, before the noise of the day rushes in, it's this. What does today actually need from me? Not, what do I need to accomplish in the next 6 months? Not, how far behind am I from where I thought I'd be by now? Not, what will people think if I don't get this right? Just, what does today need from me? Maybe today needs you to have one honest conversation you've been putting off. Maybe it needs you to rest, genuinely rest without guilt, because your body is depleted and pushing harder would set you back further than slowing down will. Maybe it needs you to take one small step forward on a project that's been stalled. Maybe it needs you to show up for someone you love with your full attention instead of a distracted half-presence. When you answer that question honestly, and then actually do those things, you end your day with something most people rarely feel. A sense of completeness, not perfection, not achievement of every item on a mile-long to-do list. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that today you showed up. Today you did what mattered. Today was not wasted. That feeling is worth more than almost anything else you could chase. The trap of measuring yourself against the finish line. One of the most destructive habits ambitious people have, and I say this with deep compassion because most of us do this, is measuring their daily progress against the ultimate destination. You want to build a successful business, so every day you measure yourself against what a fully successful business looks like, and every day you fall short because you're not there yet, because the journey is long and the destination is far and you've only just begun. You want to get healthy, so every day you measure yourself against the body or the energy level or the strength you're ultimately aiming for. And every day, the gap between here and there makes you feel behind. You want financial freedom, so every day you measure your savings account against the number that would make you feel secure. And every day, the distance feels discouraging instead of motivating. This is a trap, and it's a cruel one because it makes real progress feel invisible. Here's the alternative. Measure yourself against yesterday. That's it. Not against the destination, not against what someone else has achieved, not against some ideal version of yourself that exists in a future you haven't reached yet. Against yesterday. Did you move a little further today than you did yesterday? Did you make one better choice, build one stronger habit, have one more honest moment with yourself? That's progress. Real, meaningful, compounding progress. And when you start measuring it this way, when you zoom in from the long horizon to the single day in front of you, progress stops feeling invisible. It starts feeling inevitable. When today doesn't go as planned, let's talk about something that nobody's productivity guide prepares you for adequately. The days that just don't go well. The days when you wake up already exhausted. When something unexpected derails your whole morning. When the emotions are too loud and the focus is too scattered and the best intentions you had the night before feel completely out of reach by 9 a.m. Those days are real. They're part of life. And a system that only works on good days isn't really a system at all. So here's what focusing only on today looks like on the hard days. It doesn't look like forcing yourself to match your best day's output. It looks like asking, given where I am right now, what's the most aligned thing I can do in the next hour? Not the most impressive thing. Not the thing that would make you feel like you're crushing it. Just the most aligned thing. The smallest step that still moves you in the right direction. Maybe that's drinking a glass of water and taking a 10-minute walk before anything else. Maybe it's sitting down for 20 minutes of focused work instead of the 2 hours you planned. Maybe it's simply choosing not to make the situation worse. Not reaching for the habit that numbs. Not spiraling into self-criticism. Not letting one hard morning become a hard day. Become a hard week. Sometimes, on the difficult days, the win is just, I didn't give up. And that win counts. It counts enormously. The compound effect of showing up daily. There's a reason the most successful people in any field, athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, thinkers, talk so much about daily practice. Not weekly practice. Not when I feel inspired practice. Daily practice. Because there is something that happens when you show up every day, even imperfectly, even briefly, even on the days when it feels pointless. That cannot happen any other way. You build trust with yourself, not the grand, dramatic kind of trust that comes from achieving something impressive. The quiet, deep, unshakable kind of trust that comes from keeping small promises to yourself day after day after day. And that trust changes everything. It changes how you talk to yourself. It changes what you believe you're capable of. It changes the way you approach challenges because you have evidence built from hundreds of ordinary days that you can handle what comes. You don't need to change your whole life today. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to feel ready or confident or inspired. You just need to handle today. Do that enough times in a row, imperfectly, honestly, with compassion for yourself on the hard days, and you won't just have changed your habits. You'll have changed who you are. And that's the whole point. Chapter 4. Set up systems that calm your overwhelmed mind. There's a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much you slept. You know the one. You wake up after a full 8 hours and you're already tired. Not physically depleted, but mentally saturated. Like your brain started running the moment your eyes opened and hasn't slowed down since. Like there's a browser with 40 tabs open inside your head, and every single one of them is playing something loud, That feeling has a name. It's called decision fatigue. And combined with the relentless pace of modern life, the notifications, the responsibilities, the expectations, the constant low-grade noise of living in a world that never truly goes quiet, it creates something that a lot of people walk around with every single day without ever naming it: mental overwhelm. And here's what I want you to understand about mental overwhelm, because this matters. It is not a character flaw. It is not a sign that you're weak or incapable or falling apart. It is a completely natural response to a brain that has been asked to carry too much, decide too much, and process too much, without enough structure to support it. The solution is not to push harder. The solution is not to want it more. The solution is to build systems that take some of the weight off your brain, so that your mind can stop surviving and start actually thinking. What your brain actually needs. Your brain is extraordinary. It can solve complex problems, create beautiful things, hold deep relationships, navigate uncertainty, and process enormous amounts of information. But it cannot do all of that at full capacity if it's also spending significant energy on the basics, on remembering what you need to do today, on deciding what to eat for the third time this week, on figuring out where you put that thing you need, on managing the low-level chaos of an unstructured day. Every time your brain has to handle one of those small, repetitive decisions that a simple system could eliminate entirely, it uses up a small amount of cognitive fuel. And that fuel is not infinite. By mid-afternoon, if you haven't protected your mental resources, your ability to think clearly, make good decisions, and respond thoughtfully to what life brings you is significantly diminished. Not because you're not smart enough, because you've been spending your cognitive budget on things that didn't need to cost that much. This is why structure is not the enemy of freedom. Structure creates freedom, the freedom to use your best thinking for the things that actually deserve it. The chaos tax. Let me introduce you to a concept I call the chaos tax. Every day that you live without adequate structure, you pay a tax. Not a financial one, a mental one. And it's collected in ways you might not even notice. You pay it when you spend 20 minutes in the morning trying to figure out what to do first, because nothing is planned or prioritized. You pay it when you open the fridge at lunchtime and realize you have no idea what you're going to eat. So you make a decision that doesn't serve you because it's just the easiest one available. You pay it when you sit down to do important work and spend the first 15 minutes just trying to remember where you left off and what needs to happen next. You pay it in scattered attention, in low-grade anxiety, in the feeling that you're always slightly behind, always slightly reactive, always playing catch-up with your own life. And the cruel irony of the chaos tax is this: the more chaotic your life feels, the harder it is to build structure, because building structure requires exactly the kind of clear, focused thinking that chaos depletes, which is why you have to start small, not with a perfect system, with one simple structure in one area of your life that reduces just a little bit of the daily chaos. Just one, and then build from there. Where to begin? Identifying your highest stress points. Before you build anything, get specific about where the overwhelm is coming from. Sit down, even for just 10 minutes, and ask yourself, where in my day do I consistently feel most scattered, most reactive, most behind? For most people, the answer falls into one of a few categories. Mornings that feel chaotic and rushed, where the day starts in reaction mode before you've had a chance to get your bearings. Afternoons that blur into each other with no clear focus, where time disappears and you're not sure what you actually accomplished. Evenings that feel heavy with things left undone, where the mental load of the day follows you into the hours that should be for rest. Pick whichever one resonates most strongly. That's where you start. Not everywhere at once, not a complete life overhaul, just the one pressure point that, if relieved, would make everything else feel a little more manageable. Because here's what I've noticed about overwhelm. It rarely comes equally from all directions. There's usually one area, one specific part of the day, or one specific category of life, where the chaos is most concentrated. And when you address that area first, the relief tends to ripple outward in ways you didn't expect. Building a morning that belongs to you. Let's talk about mornings specifically because, for so many people, the morning is where the entire tone of the day is set. And most people are letting it be set by accident. The alarm goes off. The phone comes out. The notifications flood in. The news, the messages, the emails, the social media, all of it arrives before you've even fully woken up. And just like that, your morning belongs to everyone else's agenda before you've had a single moment to connect with your own. This is not a small thing. The first 30 to 60 minutes of your day have an outsized influence on how you think, feel, and perform for the rest of it. When you start your day in reaction mode, responding to the external world before you've checked in with yourself, you spend the rest of the day trying to catch up with your own life. But when you protect that first stretch of morning, even imperfectly, even briefly, something shifts. You don't need a 2-hour morning routine. You don't need to wake up before sunrise or meditate for 45 minutes or write in 3 different journals. What you need is a sequence, a short, consistent, repeatable flow that helps your mind ease into the day with some degree of intention rather than pure reaction. Here's what a simple, effective morning sequence might look like. Wake up. Before touching your phone, take 3 slow, deliberate breaths. Drink a full glass of water. Your body is dehydrated from sleep, and your brain needs hydration to function well. Spend 5 minutes on something physical. A stretch, a short walk to the window, a few minutes outside if possible. Then spend 5 minutes with your priorities. Not a full planning session, just a quiet check-in. What are the 2 or 3 things that would make today feel complete? That's it. 15 minutes, maybe 20. But those 20 minutes, done consistently, will change the quality of your entire day in ways that compound dramatically over time. The power of deciding in advance. One of the most effective things you can do to reduce daily overwhelm is to move your decisions backward in time. Instead of deciding what to eat for breakfast when you're standing in the kitchen half awake, decide the night before. Instead of figuring out what your top priorities are on the morning of, decide them the evening before. Instead of choosing what to wear when you're already running late, lay it out the night before. This sounds almost embarrassingly simple, and yet the impact it has on your mental clarity and daily energy is genuinely significant. When you make decisions in advance, when you're calm, when you have space to think, when the stakes feel lower, those decisions are usually better. And more importantly, they don't cost you anything in the moment. The cognitive work is already done. You just execute. Over time, the goal is to have as much of your day's routine decided in advance as possible. Not because spontaneity is bad, but because when the basic decisions are already made, your mind is free to be spontaneous about the things that actually benefit from creative thinking. You're not becoming a robot. You're becoming someone who saves their mental energy for the things that deserve it. Time blocking, giving your brain boundaries. It can breathe within. Another powerful tool for calming an overwhelmed mind is time blocking. And I want to explain it in a way that's gentler than most productivity frameworks present it. Time blocking doesn't mean scheduling every minute of your day. It doesn't mean living by a rigid calendar that leaves no room for life to be unpredictable. It simply means giving different parts of your day a purpose, so your brain isn't constantly having to figure out what it should be doing next. Think of it like this. Right now, if your entire day is one long, undifferentiated stretch of time with tasks floating around in it, your brain has to constantly choose and redirect. Should I work on this or that? Is this the right time for this kind of task? Should I check email now? That constant choosing is exhausting, and it leads to the frustrating experience of being busy all day and feeling like you accomplished nothing meaningful. But if you say, even loosely, mornings are for focused creative work, early afternoons are for communication and meetings, late afternoons are for lower stakes tasks, evenings are for rest and reflection, suddenly your brain knows what mode to be in. It doesn't have to keep switching gears. It can settle into the work. The result is not just more productivity. It's more peace. Because your day has a shape. It has a rhythm. And rhythm is one of the most underrated tools for mental well-being. Building space for stillness. Here's something that every high-performing, deeply peaceful person understands, and that most busy, overwhelmed people have never been taught. Your mind needs silence to function at its best. Not just sleep, not just downtime. Actual, deliberate, phone-free, distraction-free stillness. Even 5 minutes, even 10. The quality matters more than the quantity. When you give your mind genuine space, when you sit quietly, when you breathe, when you let your thoughts settle without immediately reacting to them, something important happens. Your brain begins to consolidate, to process, to make connections it couldn't make while it was busy being bombarded. Ideas emerge. Clarity returns. The low-level anxiety that's been humming in the background begins to quiet. And from that quieter place, you make better decisions. You respond more thoughtfully. You see your life more clearly. Build this into your day, not as a luxury, as a necessity, a non-negotiable appointment with your own mind. Because a calm mind is not a passive mind. It is a powerful mind. And building the systems that allow your mind to be calm is one of the most important investments you will ever make in your own life. Your system is an act of self-respect. I want to close this chapter with something that I genuinely believe and want you to really hear. Building systems that support your mental well-being is not a productivity hack. It is an act of profound self-respect. It is you saying, my peace matters, my clarity matters, my mental health matters enough for me to build my days around protecting it. That's not selfish. That's not laziness dressed up in fancy language. That's the foundation of a life that works for you and for everyone around you. Because when your mind is calm, you show up better for your work, for the people you love, for the things that matter most to you. You deserve to wake up without panic. You deserve to move through your day with clarity instead of constant scrambling. You deserve to go to bed at night with a mind that can actually rest. And you get there not by trying harder, but by building smarter. One system, one structure, one small decision made in advance. That's how it starts. And once it starts, it builds. Quietly, steadily, powerfully, until one day you look up and realize your life feels different. Not because everything changed overnight, but because you stopped waiting for calm to arrive and started building it piece by piece into the architecture of your days. Chapter 5. Stop chasing outcomes and fix what you repeat. Let me paint you a picture that might feel uncomfortably familiar. It's the beginning of a new month, maybe a new year, maybe just a new week, because sometimes that's all it takes to feel like a fresh start is possible. And you sit down with genuine intention, genuine energy, genuine hope, and you write out what you want. The outcome, the result, the destination. You want to lose the weight. You want to save the money. You want to finish the project. You want to feel better, do better, be better. And the vision is real. The desire is real. You're not faking it. You're not lying to yourself. In that moment, you genuinely, completely mean it. And then, slowly, almost invisibly, the weeks pass, and the outcome you were chasing starts to feel further away instead of closer, not because you stopped wanting it, but because wanting it, it turns out, was never actually the engine that was supposed to get you there. The engine was always your daily behavior, and your daily behavior, underneath all the fresh starts and renewed intentions, quietly stayed the same. The outcome illusion. Here's the uncomfortable truth about chasing outcomes. It feels like action, but it's often a sophisticated form of avoidance. When you spend your energy focused on the destination, visualizing it, talking about it, measuring yourself against it, feeling inspired by it, you get a hit of something that feels like progress. Your brain releases a small reward. The goal feels closer just from thinking about it, but nothing has actually moved. And worse than nothing moving, the gap between where you are and where you want to be becomes more and more visible, more and more discouraging, until eventually the distance feels so great that the whole thing starts to feel hopeless, and you put it down again, with that familiar heavy feeling of having failed again. This is the outcome illusion, and it traps smart, motivated, genuinely capable people every single day. Because the problem was never your vision. The problem was never your desire. The problem was where you were pointing your attention. And your attention was pointed at the finish line instead of at the road beneath your feet. The road beneath your feet is where everything actually happens. It's made of your daily repetitions, the small, ordinary, unsexy behaviors you perform so automatically that you barely notice them. And those repetitions, more than any goal you've ever written down, are building your life right now. Whether you're paying attention to them or not, you don't rise to your goals. You fall to your systems. There's a concept in architecture called load-bearing walls. These are the walls inside a building that aren't just decorative, they're structural. They're holding the whole thing up. And if you remove them, it doesn't matter how beautiful the facade looks. The building comes down. Your daily habits are your load-bearing walls. You can paint the exterior however you like. You can set inspiring goals and make compelling vision boards and write powerful intentions in beautiful journals. But if the daily behaviors underneath all of that are weak, if the repetitions are working against the vision instead of toward it, then the whole structure is unstable. It will hold for a while, but it won't hold forever. And the moment life puts real pressure on it, a stressful month, an unexpected setback, a period of low motivation or poor sleep or emotional difficulty, the whole thing comes down, and you're back at square one, wondering what went wrong. What went wrong was the foundation, not the vision, the foundation, and foundations are built from what you repeat. The audit that changes everything. Here's an exercise I want to invite you into. It's simple, it's free, and if you do it honestly, it might be one of the most clarifying things you've done in a long time. For the next 3 days, I want you to pay attention, with genuine curiosity without judgment, to what you actually repeat. Not what you intend to do, not what you wish you did, what you actually, consistently, automatically do. What does the first hour of your morning really look like? Not on your best day, but on an average day. What do you actually eat when you're tired, stressed, or bored? Not when you're motivated and prepared, but in the default moments. What does your relationship with your phone genuinely look like throughout the day? How do you actually spend the time between your structured obligations, the gaps, the transitions, the in-between moments that add up to hours every day? What do you do when you hit a moment of discomfort in your work? Do you push through, or do you reach for something that relieves the pressure? How do you talk to yourself when you make a mistake? What's the automatic internal narrative that runs? These patterns, the ones you've been running on autopilot for months or years, these are the real architects of your current life, not your goals, not your intentions, your automatic behaviors. And here's the thing about automatic behaviors. They're not fixed. They're not permanent. They're not who you are at some deep, unchangeable level. They're just patterns. And patterns can be changed, but only once you see them clearly. The replace strategy. Most people, when they decide to change a behavior, try to use willpower to stop it. They white-knuckle their way through the urge, using sheer force of intention to resist the automatic pattern. And sometimes that works for a while. But willpower is a finite resource, and it gets depleted quickly, especially when you're tired, stressed, or emotionally overwhelmed, which, let's be honest, is a significant portion of real life. The more effective approach, the one that actually produces lasting change, is not to fight your existing patterns with willpower. It's to replace them with something better. This is a subtle but enormously important distinction. If you keep trying to stop reaching for your phone during work, you'll be in a constant battle with a deeply ingrained habit. Your brain has learned that reaching for the phone brings relief from boredom, from discomfort, from the friction of difficult work. That relief response is powerful. Willpower alone rarely wins against it long term. But if you replace the phone reaching with something else that also provides a brief moment of relief, stepping outside for 60 seconds of fresh air, doing 10 slow, deep breaths, standing up and stretching, you're working with your brain's need for relief rather than against it. You're not eliminating the need. You're redirecting it. The same principle applies across every area where you're trying to change. If you keep skipping your evening walk, don't just try harder to force yourself outdoor. Instead, attach something you genuinely enjoy to that walk. A podcast you love, a phone call with a friend, music that lifts you. Make the walk the vehicle for something pleasurable, so that your brain starts associating movement with reward instead of obligation. If you keep stress eating in the evenings, don't try to white-knuckle your way past the urge. Instead, build a system around the moment that triggers it. Maybe it's a specific time of day, or a specific emotional state, or a specific location in your home. Once you identify the trigger, you can build a different response, something that addresses the underlying need, usually comfort, relief, or a sense of reward, without the cost. You're not fighting your habits, you're redesigning them, and that redesign is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing, attentive practice of noticing what you're repeating and asking, gently, curiously, without self-punishment, is this serving the person I'm trying to become? Identity is built from repetition. Here's something profound that gets lost in most conversations about habit change. You are not trying to change what you do. You are trying to change who you are. And who you are, your identity, your self-concept, the story you carry about yourself, is built from evidence, specifically from the evidence of what you repeatedly do. Every time you sit down to do focused work, even when you don't feel like it, you add a data point to the story. I am someone who follows through. Every time you choose the meal that actually nourishes you over the one that just comforts you, you add a data point. I am someone who takes care of themselves. Every time you keep the small promise you made to yourself, even a tiny one, you add a data point. I am someone who can be trusted. These data points accumulate, and over time, they don't just change your behavior, they change your belief about yourself. And when your belief about yourself changes, when you genuinely start to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who shows up, someone who builds, your behavior changes almost automatically because you're no longer fighting against your identity. You're acting from it. This is the real power of fixing what you repeat. Not just the external results it eventually produces, though those are real and meaningful, but the internal shift, the quiet growing confidence that comes from watching yourself keep promises to yourself day after day in the small moments when nobody is watching. That confidence is not arrogance. It is the natural result of earning your own trust, and it changes everything. The daily question that rebuilds your life. Instead of asking yourself every day, did I get closer to my goal? A question that often leads to discouragement, comparison, and the feeling of being perpetually behind. I want to offer you a different question, a simpler one, a more honest one, a more powerful one. Did I act today like the person I'm trying to become? Not perfectly, not impressively, not in a way that would make a great highlight reel. Just, did your actions today reflect the values and identity you're working to build? If the answer is yes, even partially, even imperfectly, that's a good day. That's a day that built something real. If the answer is no, that's not a failure. That's information. That's your system showing you where it needs attention, where a pattern needs to be replaced, where a trigger needs to be identified and redirected. Every day is feedback. Every repetition is data. And when you start treating your daily behavior as information rather than judgment, something shifts in how you relate to the process of change. You stop being at war with yourself. You start being a curious, compassionate observer of yourself, someone who is genuinely interested in understanding their own patterns and gently, steadily redirecting them toward something better. That's not soft. That's not weak. That is the most sophisticated, effective approach to personal change that exists. The slow burn of real transformation. I want to be honest with you about something because I think you deserve honesty more than you need another dose of hype. Fixing what you repeat is not fast. It is not dramatic. It will not produce results you can photograph and share in 2 weeks. What it will produce, if you stay with it, if you keep showing up, if you keep redirecting your automatic behaviors towards something more aligned with who you're trying to be, is something far more valuable than quick results. It will produce a life that feels genuinely different from the inside, not a life where you achieved a goal and then scrambled to maintain it. A life where the goal became unnecessary because you became the kind of person for whom the behavior is just natural, just normal, just who you are. That's the destination worth building toward, not the outcome on the whiteboard, the identity in your bones. And it's built one repeated action at a time in the ordinary moments of an ordinary day. So stop chasing the outcome. Start tending to the repetition. That's where your future lives, right there in what you choose to do again. Chapter 6. Train your brain to crave daily small wins. I want to start this chapter with a question that might catch you off guard. When was the last time you genuinely celebrated something small that you did? Not something impressive, not something that warranted applause or recognition from someone else, something quiet, something that only you knew about. The morning you got up when every part of you wanted to stay in bed. The evening you chose the walk over the couch. The moment you paused before reacting and chose a better response. The day you sat down and did the work even though you weren't feeling it. When was the last time you looked at one of those moments and thought, that matters, that counts, I'm proud of that? If you're like most people, the honest answer is not recently, maybe not ever. And that gap, the gap between what you do and how much you allow yourself to value it, might be one of the most quietly damaging patterns in your entire relationship with growth. Because here's what nobody tells you about motivation and momentum and consistency. They don't come primarily from big achievements. They come from the daily accumulation of small victories that your brain has been taught to recognize, register, and reward. And if you've never taught your brain to do that, if you've been waiting for the big win before you let yourself feel progress, then you've been running an engine without fuel for a very long time. Let's fix that. How your brain actually works. Your brain is, at its most fundamental level, a pattern recognition and reward-seeking machine. It is constantly, every moment of every day, scanning your experience and asking, what brought relief? What brought pleasure? What felt safe? What felt good? And whatever answers it finds, it files away and begins to seek out again. This is not a flaw in your design. It's actually a profoundly elegant system, one that, when understood and worked with intentionally, becomes one of the most powerful tools you have for building the life you want. The problem is that most people have accidentally trained this system to reward the wrong things. Years of reaching for your phone when you feel bored has trained your brain to associate boredom with screen time. Years of eating something comforting when you feel stressed has trained your brain to associate stress with food. Years of avoiding difficult work by finding something easier to do has trained your brain to associate discomfort with escape. None of this happened because you're weak or undisciplined. It happened because your brain was doing exactly what it's designed to do, finding patterns that bring relief and repeating them. The question is not how to fight this system. The question is how to redirect it, how to teach your brain, gently, consistently over time, that progress feels better than escape, that completion feels better than avoidance, that showing up for yourself feels better than hiding from yourself. And the way you teach it, that is through small wins, daily, deliberately, consistently. Why small wins work when big goals don't? Here's something that most goal-setting frameworks completely miss. Your brain cannot sustain motivation on delayed rewards alone. If the only moment of genuine satisfaction in your growth journey comes when you reach the final destination, when you hit the goal weight, when you reach the savings target, when the project is finally complete, your brain is being asked to work for months or years on the promise of a reward that feels abstract and distant and uncertain, and your brain is not good at that. Nobody's brain is good at that. It's not how we're wired. What your brain is extraordinarily good at is responding to immediate, concrete, tangible evidence that something is working. That forward motion is happening. That effort is producing results, even small ones. This is why small wins are not a consolation prize for people who can't achieve big things. They are the mechanism through which big things get built. Every morning routine completed is a win. Every glass of water chosen over something that doesn't serve you is a win. Every difficult conversation faced instead of avoided is a win. Every 10 minutes of focused work in a world full of distraction is a win. Every moment of choosing your system over your impulse is a win. These wins may seem invisible. They rarely make headlines. Nobody is going to congratulate you for drinking enough water today or finishing your to-do list or going to bed at a reasonable hour. But your brain notices. And if you learn to notice too, if you learn to pause and register to completion, to let yourself feel the quiet satisfaction of having followed through, your brain begins to change what it craves. It starts wanting more of that feeling, more of the quiet pride of following through, more of the clean, solid feeling of having honored your own commitments. And when your brain starts craving progress, when growth feels genuinely rewarding instead of just effortful, discipline stops being something you have to force. It becomes something you actually want. The architecture of a win. Let's get practical for a moment, because I want you to walk away from this chapter with something you can actually use. A small win has 3 components, and when you understand all 3, you can build them intentionally into every single day. The first component is clarity. A win has to be specific enough that you know without ambiguity whether you did it or not. Be healthier today is not a win. It's too vague to register as complete. Take a 15-minute walk before lunch is a win. It's clear. It's bounded. It's either done or it isn't. The second component is reachability. A win has to be genuinely achievable given your current circumstances, not your best day circumstances, not your ideal life circumstances, but your actual, real, right now circumstances. If you're in a season of exhaustion and overwhelm, a win might be as small as making your bed. And that's not a lowered standard, that's an honest one. A win that's actually reached builds more momentum than a win that's aspired to and missed. The third component is recognition. This is the one most people skip entirely, and it's the most important one of all. After you complete the small action, after you do the thing you said you would do, you have to pause, even for 30 seconds, even for 10, and let yourself feel it. Not perform gratitude or write elaborate journal entries. Just genuinely notice, I said I would, and I did. Let that land. Let your brain register the completion as meaningful. That pause is where the rewiring happens. That moment of conscious recognition is what teaches your brain that this kind of behavior, following through, showing up, honoring commitments to yourself, produces something worth having. Without the pause, you just move on to the next task, and your brain files the experience as neutral. With the pause, you've given it something to reach for next time. Building your daily win structure. Here's how to actually implement this in a way that's simple enough to sustain. Every evening or every morning, whichever feels more natural, identify 2 or 3 things you can accomplish that day that would represent genuine progress. Not your entire to-do list, not everything you wish you could do. Just 2 or 3 clear, reachable actions that align with the person you're trying to become. Write them down. Physically, if possible. There's something about the act of writing that makes commitments feel more real. Then, as you move through your day, treat those 2 or 3 things as non-negotiable. Not because the world will end if you miss one, but because you're building something more important than productivity. You're building trust with yourself. And trust is built by keeping promises. When you complete each one, acknowledge it. Cross it off. Say it out loud if that helps. Notice the feeling of completion and let yourself stay with it for a moment before moving on. At the end of the day, and this part is optional but powerful, spend 5 minutes reviewing your wins, not analyzing them, not judging them, just noticing them, recognizing what you did, allowing yourself to feel the cumulative weight of a day spent moving in the right direction. Over time, this practice does something remarkable to your relationship with effort. The work that used to feel heavy starts to feel purposeful. The discipline that used to feel forced starts to feel earned. The progress that used to feel invisible starts to feel real and tangible and worth celebrating. And from that foundation, from a brain that has been trained to associate growth with genuine reward, everything else becomes more possible. When you have an off day, let me be real with you about something because this is important. There will be days when the wins don't come easily, days when you set your intention and then life lands differently than you expected, days when the small victory you were counting on slips through your fingers because of circumstances outside your control, or because of a hard emotional moment, or simply because you're human and humans have off days. On those days, the win is not what you accomplished. The win is how you responded. Did you treat yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a good friend? Did you resist the spiral of self-criticism that turns one hard day into a hard week? Did you reset, gently, without drama, and come back to your intention tomorrow? If yes, that's a win, a significant one, because the ability to return, to not let a slip become a collapse, to not let a hard day become an identity statement, that is one of the most important skills you can build. And it's built the same way every other skill is built, through practice, through small, repeated acts of choosing to come back instead of staying down. The compound effect of daily wins. I want to close this chapter with a thought that I'd like you to sit with. Imagine that every single day you stack just 3 small wins. 3 specific, reachable, aligned actions that you complete and consciously recognize. Nothing dramatic, nothing impressive from the outside. Just 3 quiet acts of following through. In a week, that's 21 wins. In a month, it's 90. In a year, it's over 1,000 individual moments where you prove to yourself that you are someone who shows up. 1,000 moments of evidence. 1,000 data points for the story. I follow through. I can be trusted. I am building something real. What does that do to your self-belief? What does that do to your confidence? What does that do to your relationship with challenge and discomfort and uncertainty? It transforms them, not overnight, not dramatically, but deeply and permanently, because you've built something that no external achievement can give you and no external failure can take away. The unshakable knowledge drawn from 1,000 ordinary moments that you are exactly the kind of person who builds a better life. Not someday, every day, one small win at a time. Chapter 7. Change what you do, not how you feel. Let me tell you about a waiting room that most people spend years of their life sitting in. It's not a physical place. You won't find it on any map. But you know it. You've been there. Maybe you're there right now. It's the place where you wait to feel ready. You wait to feel confident enough to start the business. You wait to feel motivated enough to begin the workout. You wait to feel inspired enough to write the first page. You wait to feel calm enough to have the difficult conversation. You wait to feel good enough, healed enough, prepared enough, certain enough to finally begin building the life you keep saying you want. And the waiting room is comfortable in its own way. It has the warmth of possibility without the risk of action. You're not failing in the waiting room because you haven't tried yet. You're just getting ready, almost ready, nearly ready. But the door to the life you want doesn't open from inside that room. It opens from the other side. And the only way to get there is to walk through it before you feel ready. Because here's the truth that changes everything once you really absorb it. You will never feel ready. And you don't need to. The feeling trap. We live in a culture that is deeply, almost religiously, committed to the idea that feelings should come first, that you should feel motivated before you act, that you should feel confident before you speak, that you should feel inspired before you create, that you should feel certain before you commit. And on the surface, this seems reasonable, even compassionate. Of course you should honor your feelings. Of course your emotional state matters. But here's what this feeling first philosophy actually produces in practice: paralysis. Because feelings are not reliable, they are not consistent, they do not show up on schedule, they are influenced by how much you slept last night, by a conversation you had 3 days ago, by the weather, by your blood sugar, by a memory that surfaced unexpectedly, by 100 variables you can't control and often can't even identify. If you wait for the feeling before you take the action, you are essentially handing the steering wheel of your life to something wildly inconsistent and completely unpredictable. And the painful irony is this: the more you wait for the feeling, the harder it becomes to act without it, because your brain learns through repetition, just like everything else, that action requires feeling, that you can't move until the mood is right, until the motivation is present, until everything inside aligns perfectly with what needs to happen. And so the waiting room gets more comfortable, and the door stays closed, and the life you want remains on the other side of a threshold you never quite cross. Action first, feeling second. Here's the reframe that I want to offer you, and I want you to sit with it because it runs counter to a lot of what you've been told. Action creates feeling, not the other way around. This is not motivational rhetoric. This is neuroscience. When you move your body, your brain chemistry literally changes. When you complete a task, your brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter of reward and motivation. When you follow through on a commitment, your nervous system registers a form of relief and satisfaction that is genuinely physiological, not just psychological. You don't get these benefits from thinking about acting. You don't get them from planning to act. You only get them from actually acting, which means that the feeling you've been waiting for, the motivation, the confidence, the readiness, is available to you right now, today. But it lives on the other side of action, not before it. The motivated feeling follows the motivated action, not the other way around. Think about the last time you forced yourself to exercise when you really didn't want to. Maybe you can remember the exact moment, the alarm going off, the warmth of the bed, the absolute certainty that nothing good could possibly come from getting up right now. And then you got up anyway. You put on your shoes, you started moving, and somewhere in the first 10 minutes, maybe it was the fresh air, maybe it was the rhythm of movement, maybe it was simply the act of proving to yourself that you could do the hard thing. Something shifted. The resistance softened. The energy returned. By the time you were done, you felt better than you had in hours. That transformation happened because of the action, not because you waited until you felt ready for it. That's the principle, and it applies everywhere. The negotiation you have to stop having most people when they face a moment of resistance, when the action is available but the feeling isn't supportive, enter into a negotiation with themselves. Maybe I'll do it later when I'm more awake. Maybe I'll start fresh on Monday. Maybe I need to think about it a little more first. Maybe today isn't the right day. And the negotiation feels reasonable in the moment. It feels like self-care. It feels like wisdom. But here's what's actually happening. You're letting your present emotional state make decisions for your future self. And your present emotional state, the tired, resistant, comfort-seeking part of you, does not have your future self's best interests at heart. Your future self, the one who will live with the consequences of today's choices, needs you to act now, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable, even when every feeling you have is telling you to wait. Not harshly, not punitively. You don't need to override your feelings with aggression or force. You just need to learn to act alongside them. To say, yes, I notice I don't feel like doing this right now, and I'm going to do it anyway. Not because I'm ignoring how I feel, but because I know that acting is what will actually change how I feel. That's not the same as suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't matter. It's recognizing that you are bigger than your feelings, that you contain them, they don't contain you, and that you have the capacity to choose your behavior regardless of what your emotional state is doing in any given moment. That capacity, that space between feeling and action, is where your freedom lives. What emotional maturity actually looks like. I want to say something about emotional maturity because I think it's deeply misunderstood. Emotional maturity is not about not feeling things. It's not about being stoic or detached or impervious to difficulty. People who are emotionally mature feel things deeply, often more deeply than people who haven't done the work of self-understanding. What makes them different is not what they feel. It's what they do with what they feel. An emotionally mature person feels the anxiety before the difficult conversation and has the conversation anyway. They feel the exhaustion before the workout and put on their shoes anyway. They feel the discouragement when results are slow and show up to their system anyway. They don't bypass the feeling. They don't pretend it isn't there. They acknowledge it fully and honestly, and then they act from their values rather than from their emotions. Yes, I'm scared, and I'm going to do this anyway. Yes, I'm tired, and I'm going to do what I can anyway. Yes, I'm discouraged, and I'm going to keep showing up anyway. That word, anyway, is one of the most powerful words in the vocabulary of someone who is genuinely building a better life, because it honors both the truth of how you feel and the commitment to how you want to live. It doesn't ask you to be a machine. It asks you to be a person who has decided that their values matter more than their moods. And that decision, made and remade every day in the small moments of resistance and difficulty, is what builds character, real character, the kind that holds up under pressure, the kind that your future self will be deeply grateful for. Building structure, so your feelings don't get a vote. Here's a practical truth about the relationship between feelings and action. The less structure you have, the more your feelings get to decide. When your day is unstructured, when you wake up without a clear sequence, when your tasks are vague and unprioritized, when nothing is decided in advance, every single action requires a fresh decision. And every fresh decision is an opportunity for your feelings to weigh in. Do I feel like doing this right now? No, not really. Maybe later. But when your day has structure, when the sequence is clear, when the habits are anchored, when the routine is well established enough to be almost automatic, your feelings lose much of their influence. Because you're not deciding whether to do the thing, you're just doing it the way you always do, because that's how your day works. This is why building a strong routine is not just a productivity strategy, it is an emotional regulation strategy. The more automatic your aligned behaviors become, the less your mood can derail them. The more your habits are embedded in the structure of your day, the less willpower and motivation you need to sustain them, because they're no longer driven by feeling, they're driven by pattern. And patterns, unlike feelings, are consistent. The identity shift that makes it sustainable. Here's where it all comes together, and this is the part I really want you to hear. When you act from your values consistently enough, when you keep showing up despite how you feel again and again and again, something profound begins to happen to your sense of self. You stop identifying as someone who struggles with motivation. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs to feel inspired to take action. You stop living as someone who is at the mercy of their emotional state, and you start identifying as someone who simply shows up, someone who does the work, someone who follows through, not because you always feel like it, but because that's who you are. And when your identity shifts, when the behavior is no longer something you're trying to do, but something you simply are, the relationship between feeling and action changes entirely. You still feel things, all of them, the tiredness, the resistance, the doubt, the discouragement. You don't become immune to any of it, but none of it stops you anymore, because you've built enough evidence through hundreds of small acts of showing up despite how you felt, that you are bigger than your moods, that your life is not built on the days you felt amazing. It's built on the days you showed up anyway, and those days, the ordinary, difficult, uninspired days when you chose action over avoidance, those are the days that matter most. Those are the days that build something real. One step, right now, whatever you feel. I want to close this chapter with something direct, because I think you deserve directness alongside the compassion. Whatever you've been waiting to feel before you begin, you don't need to feel it first. You need to begin, and then you'll feel it. Whatever action you've been putting off until you're more ready, you're ready enough. You're more ready than you think, and the act of starting will make you more ready still. Whatever voice inside you is saying, not yet, not now, wait until, that voice is not protecting you. It is keeping you exactly where you are, in a life that looks a lot like yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. The door is right there. You don't have to feel confident to walk through it. You just have to walk. One step, whatever you feel, right now. That step is the system. That step is the proof. That step is the beginning of everything you've been waiting for. Take it. Chapter 8. Design your routine to reduce overthinking. Daily. Here's something I want you to try right now. Just for a moment, stop reading and notice what's happening inside your head. How many thoughts are running simultaneously? How many unresolved questions are floating around in there? How many things are you mentally tracking, worrying about, planning for, replaying, anticipating, second-guessing, all at the same time? If you're like most people living in the modern world, the answer is a lot. More than you consciously realize, more than any mind was ever designed to carry. And here's the thing about all that mental noise. It doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it actively costs you. Every background thought that's running on an open loop in your mind is using cognitive resources that could otherwise be available for clarity, creativity, connection, and genuine presence. You're not distracted because you lack focus. You're distracted because your mental bandwidth is already maxed out before you've even sat down to do anything meaningful. The solution is not to think harder. It is not to concentrate more intensely. It is not to download another focus app or try another productivity technique. The solution is to close the loops, to take the swirling contents of your overloaded mind and give them a home, a structure, a sequence, a system, so that your brain can finally let go of them and be present for what's actually in front of you. That's what a well-designed routine does. Not just organize your time. It organizes your mind. Understanding why your brain overthinks. Before we talk about solutions, let's spend a moment understanding the problem at its root. Because overthinking is not a personality flaw and it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a feature of an intelligent, conscientious mind that has been given too many open questions and not enough answers. Your brain has what psychologists sometimes call a completion drive, a deep, almost compulsive need to resolve open loops, unfinished tasks, unanswered questions, unresolved decisions. Your brain cannot fully let go of these. It keeps returning to them, turning them over, worrying at the edges, searching for resolution. This is why you think about the email you forgot to send right before you fall asleep. This is why the decision you haven't made keeps surfacing at random moments throughout your day. This is why the conversation you need to have lives rent-free in your head until you actually have it. Your brain isn't being irrational. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, trying to resolve incomplete things so it can feel safe and settled. The problem is that modern life gives most of us dozens of open loops at any given time. And without a system to capture and close those loops, our minds are in a state of constant low-level alarm, always scanning, always monitoring, always searching for resolution that never fully arrives. A good routine addresses this not by eliminating open loops entirely. Life will always have some, but by giving your brain a reliable process for handling them, a time and a place for everything, a clear sequence for what gets addressed when. And when your brain trusts that there is a system, that nothing important will fall through the cracks, that the things you need to remember will be remembered, that the decisions you need to make will be made at the appropriate time, it can finally relax its grip. It can stop scanning. It can be present. That relaxation is not laziness. That is your brain operating at its actual best. The cost of living without structure. I want to paint you a picture of what an unstructured day actually costs. Not in terms of productivity, but in terms of mental and emotional well-being. You wake up without a clear sequence. Before you've fully surfaced from sleep, you're already scanning your environment for what needs to happen. You check your phone. A flood of information arrives before your nervous system has had a chance to calibrate. You move through the first hour of your morning reactively, responding to whatever is loudest and most immediately demanding. By mid-morning, you've made dozens of small decisions. What to eat, what to wear, what to do first, how to respond to that message, whether to tackle the difficult task or the easier one. And each of those decisions, however minor, has drawn from your cognitive budget. By afternoon, that budget is significantly depleted. Your ability to think clearly, make good choices, resist impulses, and respond thoughtfully to what life presents has measurably decreased. Not because you're not trying, because your brain has been working overtime all day on things that a good system could have handled in advance. By evening, you feel exhausted, not just physically, but mentally saturated. And yet the open loops keep spinning. The things you didn't resolve today are still there, waiting, feeding the low-grade anxiety that follows you to bed, and sometimes through the night. And tomorrow, the cycle begins again. This is not a character issue. This is a structural issue. And structural issues require structural solutions. Starting with your morning architecture. The morning is where your day's mental architecture is established, and most people are building that architecture by accident, or more accurately, letting it be built for them by whoever and whatever is loudest in the first few minutes after waking. I want to offer you a different approach, a simple one that doesn't require 2 hours or elaborate rituals or a complete lifestyle overhaul. The goal of your morning routine is not to accomplish impressive things before breakfast. The goal is to begin the day on your terms, with enough clarity, groundedness, and intention that when the noise of the day arrives, you have a stable center to return to. Here's what that can look like in practice. The first thing you do in the morning, before anything else, before the phone, before the news, before anyone else's needs land on you, is something that belongs entirely to you, something that signals to your nervous system. This time is mine. This moment is intentional. It could be 5 minutes of stillness, a short walk outside where you feel the air and notice the world without a screen mediating the experience, a few minutes of gentle movement that reconnects you with your body after hours of sleep, a quiet cup of something warm, drunk slowly, without multitasking. It doesn't need to be long. It needs to be yours. Then, and this is a piece that most people miss, spend a few minutes establishing your mental architecture for the day. Not a full planning session, just a clear, simple answer to 3 questions. What are the 2 or 3 things that would make today genuinely complete? Not everything on your list, just the 2 or 3 that truly matter. The ones that, if you did them and nothing else, would mean the day was worthwhile. Is there anything unresolved from yesterday that needs attention today? Not to ruminate on it, just to acknowledge it, assign it a time, and close the loop in your mind. What's one thing I can do today that serves the person I'm becoming? One aligned action, one small vote for the life you're building. Answer those 3 questions and write the answers down. You've just given your brain the resolution it's been searching for. You've closed the most important loops before the day has even fully begun. And from that foundation, from that brief but deliberate moment of clarity, everything else flows more easily. Reducing decisions. Throughout the day, beyond the morning, the most powerful thing you can do to reduce overthinking throughout your day is to eliminate as many unnecessary decisions as possible. I know that sounds counterintuitive. We tend to think of freedom as having lots of choices. But when every moment of your day is a fresh decision point, your brain is constantly in evaluation mode, weighing options, considering consequences, managing the low-level anxiety that comes with uncertainty. What actually creates freedom, the felt sense of spaciousness and ease that we're all looking for, is having fewer decisions to make about the things that don't actually matter. So you have more cognitive space for the things that do. So decide things in advance, as many things as reasonably possible. Decide your meals for the week on Sunday. Not necessarily every ingredient of every dish, just the general shape of your eating. Knowing roughly what you'll have for dinner on Thursday removes a decision that would otherwise surface mid-afternoon when your cognitive resources are already depleted. Decide your work priorities the evening before. Before you close out your day, spend 5 minutes identifying the 2 or 3 most important things for tomorrow. When you wake up, you're not starting from scratch. You're executing a plan that your clearer-headed evening self already made. Decide your daily non-negotiables in advance and commit to them as defaults. Exercise happens at this time. Reading happens during this window. Phone goes away at this hour. These decisions, made once and honored consistently, stop costing you cognitive resources every day. The more you can reduce decision fatigue in the areas that don't require fresh thinking, the more mental clarity you'll have available for the areas that do. Time blocking as mental clarity. Earlier in this book, we touched on time blocking. I want to go a little deeper here because when it's used correctly, with flexibility and self-awareness rather than rigidity, it's one of the most effective tools available for reducing mental noise. The core principle is simple. Give different parts of your day a purpose and protect that purpose from interruption. Most people's days look like this: a uniform stretch of waking hours into which all tasks, urgent and important, shallow and deep, creative and administrative, are thrown together in no particular order to be addressed in whatever sequence mood and circumstance dictate. The result is that nothing gets the quality of attention it deserves. Deep work gets interrupted by shallow tasks. Creative thinking gets disrupted by administrative noise. Rest gets contaminated by guilt about unfinished work. And the whole day feels like you were busy without ever feeling truly engaged. Time blocking addresses this by creating what I think of as mental neighborhoods, distinct zones of your day, each with its own character and purpose. Maybe your mornings are the neighborhood for deep, focused, cognitively demanding work, the writing, the thinking, the problem-solving that requires your full attention. This zone is protected. Notifications off. Door closed if possible. No meetings scheduled here. Maybe your late mornings or early afternoons are the neighborhood for communication, emails, messages, quick calls, coordination, responsive, outward-facing work that fits well in the hours after your best thinking energy has been used. Maybe your mid-afternoons are for lighter tasks, administrative work, organization, review, the kind of work that doesn't require peak cognitive performance but still needs to get done. Maybe your evenings have a neighborhood too, one for rest, for connection, for the activities that restore you. Not a to-do list, a genuine transition into the part of your day that isn't about productivity. When your day has this kind of architecture, when different types of attention have different homes, your brain doesn't have to keep switching modes. It settles into each neighborhood naturally. And the overthinking that comes from constantly managing competing demands starts to quiet. The evening reset that changes tomorrow. One of the most underrated practices for reducing overthinking is a brief, consistent evening reset. Not a long planning session, not a comprehensive review, just a short, intentional closing of the day that tells your brain, this day is complete. What needs to carry? Forward is noted. You can rest now. Here's what a simple evening reset can look like. Spend 5 minutes reviewing what happened today, not to judge it, but to complete it. What got done? What didn't? What needs to move to tomorrow? Write it down. The act of externalizing these things, of getting them out of your head and onto paper, is itself a form of cognitive relief. Your brain no longer has to hold them. The page is holding them now. Then spend 2 minutes identifying tomorrow's most important priorities. Those 2 or 3 things we talked about earlier. Set them clearly in your mind, and then genuinely let the day go. This practice is so simple that it's easy to underestimate. But done consistently, even just 5 to 10 minutes every evening, it changes the quality of your sleep, reduces the mental noise that follows you to bed, and starts each morning with clarity already in place rather than having to be constructed from scratch. Your brain will thank you, your sleep will thank you, and the person who wakes up tomorrow, a little clearer, a little more settled, a little more ready, will thank you too. Protecting your digital environment. No conversation about overthinking and mental clarity is complete without addressing the single most consistent source of cognitive disruption in most modern lives, the smartphone. I'm not going to tell you to throw it in a river. Your phone is a genuinely useful tool, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. But I am going to invite you to look honestly at the relationship you currently have with it, and ask whether that relationship is serving you or depleting you. Every notification that interrupts your focus costs more than just the seconds it takes to glance at it. Research consistently shows that after an interruption, even a brief one, it takes an average of over 20 minutes for your brain to return to the same depth of focus it had before. 20 minutes for a 2-second glance at a notification. Multiply that by the number of times you check your phone in an average day, and you start to understand why focused work feels so difficult, why your thoughts feel so scattered, why the end of a long day can feel like you worked hard but accomplished very little. Building clear boundaries with your digital environment is not about discipline for its own sake. It is about protecting the cognitive resources you need to think clearly, act intentionally, and build the life you're working toward. Set specific times for checking messages. Turn off notifications for everything that doesn't require immediate response, which, honestly, is most things. Create phone-free zones in your day, your morning routine, your meals, the hour before bed, not as punishment, but as protection. Your attention is finite. It is also one of the most valuable things you possess. What you point it at shapes your experience of your own life. Protect it accordingly. The quiet mind at the center. I want to close this chapter with something I genuinely believe and want you to hear as both practical advice and an act of care. You deserve a quiet mind, not a mind that's been silenced or numbed or escaped through distraction, a genuinely quiet mind, one that has been given enough structure, enough clarity, enough resolution of open loops that it can actually rest. A quiet mind is not a passive mind. It is a powerful one. It thinks more clearly. It feels more deeply. It responds more wisely. It creates more freely. And it is available to you, not as a distant aspiration, as a daily practice. Build the morning that belongs to you. Reduce the decisions that drain you. Give different parts of your day a clear purpose. Create a simple evening ritual that closes the day with intention. Protect your attention from the constant pull of digital noise. Do these things, not perfectly, not all at once, but steadily, one piece at a time, and watch what happens to the noise inside your head. Watch it begin to quiet. Watch the clarity begin to arrive. And in that clarity, watch yourself begin to show up in your own life in ways that have nothing to do with how productive you are or how many things you check off a list, but everything to do with how present you are, how grounded, how genuinely peacefully yourself. That is worth building. Every single day. Chapter 9. Stay with systems when results feel too slow. There's a specific kind of discouragement that nobody really prepares you for when you start building a better life. It's not the discouragement of failing. It's not the discouragement of making a mistake or having a bad day or falling off track. Those kinds of discouragement are painful, but they make sense. They have a clear cause and a clear response. No, the discouragement I'm talking about is quieter and in many ways more dangerous. It's the discouragement of doing everything right and still not seeing results. You've built the routine. You're showing up consistently. You're making the aligned choices. You're doing the work day after day with genuine intention and real effort. And yet, when you look around at your life, when you measure where you are against where you want to be, the gap still feels enormous. The progress feels invisible. The change feels too slow to be real. And somewhere in that quiet, the doubt begins to surface. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I'm just not the kind of person who changes. Maybe I should try something different. Maybe I should try harder. Maybe I should try less. Maybe I should just stop. That voice, that particular flavor of doubt, is not a sign that your system is broken. It is the inevitable companion of every real transformation that has ever happened, and knowing how to respond to it, how to stay committed to your system when results feel painfully slow, might be the single most important skill you can develop on this entire journey. Why results always lag behind effort? Let me explain something that most people intuitively understand but emotionally struggle with. In any genuine transformation, results always lag behind effort. Always. This is not a flaw in the process. It is the nature of real change. Think about what's actually happening when you build a new habit or develop a new system. You're not just changing a behavior. You're literally rewiring your brain. New neural pathways are being formed. Old ones are being gradually deprioritized. Your identity, the deep, slow-moving sense of who you are, is being reconstructed from the inside out. That process is real. It is happening. But it is not happening on the surface where you can easily see it. It's happening in the deep structure of who you are. And deep structural change takes time to become visible on the surface. This is why the seed metaphor is so powerful and so true. When you plant a seed in the ground and water it every day, nothing looks like it's happening for weeks. The surface of the soil stays undisturbed. No green shoots appear. No visible evidence that anything is occurring. But underground, in the dark, in the quiet, away from observation, everything is happening. The seed is absorbing water. The shell is softening. The first tender root is reaching downward. The first fragile shoot is pushing upward, millimeter by millimeter, toward the surface. And then one day, with no dramatic announcement, with no warning, it breaks through, and suddenly there is visible growth. And that growth, once it starts, often happens faster than you expected. Your habits are doing exactly this right now, even when you can't see it. The roots of your new identity are going deeper every day you show up. The foundation of your new life is being laid every time you honor your system. The person you are becoming is emerging, slowly, invisibly, powerfully, from the accumulated weight of your consistent choices. You just have to stay with it long enough to break through the surface. The impatience trap. Here's something worth understanding about the world you're living in as you try to build a better life. Everything around you is designed to make you impatient. Your phone delivers instant responses. Streaming services give you the next episode before you finish processing the last one. Food arrives in 30 minutes, or it's free. Information is available in milliseconds. Feedback is instantaneous and constant. You have been, quite literally, conditioned by your environment to expect results fast, to interpret slowness as failure, to read the absence of immediate feedback as evidence that something isn't working. And then you try to build a life, a real, deep, lasting life, which is the one thing in the modern world that genuinely cannot be rushed. And your conditioned impatience tells you that the slowness means something is wrong. It doesn't. The slowness means something is real. The things that grow fast usually don't last. The things that are built slowly, with patience and consistency and genuine structural integrity, are the things that hold. A tree that grows quickly in optimal conditions but hasn't developed deep roots will fall in the first significant storm. A tree that has grown slowly, sending its roots deeper with every season, can withstand almost anything. Which kind of tree do you want to be? That's not a rhetorical question, because the answer determines how you respond to slowness. Whether you interpret it as failure and abandon the system that's quietly building your roots, or whether you interpret it as evidence that something real is happening beneath the surface. What consistency without applause looks like. I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough in conversations about personal growth. The experience of doing the right thing when absolutely nobody is watching, acknowledging, or validating it. Because that, the quiet, unwitnessed showing up, is where the real work happens. It's easy to be consistent when people are noticing. When someone comments on your progress, when a friend asks how your routine is going, when the results are visible enough that others can see them. Consistency in those moments feels natural. The external feedback provides fuel. But what about the weeks when nobody asks? When the results are invisible, when you're doing all the right things and there is absolutely no external evidence that it matters? That's when you find out what your system is actually made of. Not what it looks like when things are going well, but what it holds up under when the feedback loop goes quiet. And here's what I want you to understand about those quiet, unrewarded periods of consistent effort. They are not wasted. They are not lost. They are building something that visible, applauded, externally validated effort cannot build: internal strength. Every time you show up for your system when nobody is watching, every time you honor your habits when there's no immediate reward for doing so, you are building the deepest kind of self-respect that exists. the kind that doesn't depend on external conditions, the kind that doesn't require an audience or a milestone or a visible result, the kind that simply knows, I showed up. I kept my word to myself. I am someone who does that. That knowing, accumulated over hundreds of quiet, unwitnessed days, becomes one of the most unshakable things you possess, and it carries you through the moments when the doubt is loudest and the results are most invisible. How to stay with the system when everything in you wants to quit. Let me get practical here, because I know that understanding why you should stay with the system is different from knowing how to actually do it when you're in the middle of a slow, discouraging stretch. Here are the things that genuinely help. Return to your reason, not your goal. Your reason. Why did you start building this system in the first place? What was the underlying thing you were reaching for? More often than not, it wasn't the specific outcome. It was a feeling, a quality of life, a relationship with yourself. Return to that. Let it remind you what you're actually building. Zoom out your timeline. When results feel slow, it's usually because your timeline is too short. You're measuring a year's journey in weeks. Try looking at a longer horizon. Ask yourself, if I stay with this system for the next 12 months, not perfectly, but consistently, where will I be? That question often reframes the current slowness from discouraging to simply part of the process. Find the evidence you're not seeing. When visible progress is slow, look for the invisible kind. Are you sleeping better? Feeling slightly more grounded? Responding to difficulty with a little more composure than you used to? Carrying slightly less anxiety about the future? These are signs of real, meaningful change, even if they're not the dramatic results you are hoping to see by now. Talk to someone who understands, not to complain or to seek validation, but to be witnessed. There is something genuinely powerful about saying out loud, I'm in a slow stretch and I'm struggling with it, and having someone who gets it reflect back. That's real. Keep going. Find your person. Be that person for someone else too. Recommit to the process, not the outcome. On the days when staying feels hardest, narrow your commitment down to the smallest possible unit. Just today. Not the rest of the year. Not the rest of the month. Just today's system. Just today's habits. Just this one day of showing up. And then tomorrow, do the same. The compound interest of consistency. There's a principle in finance called compound interest. The idea that returns generate their own returns, creating exponential growth over time. A small amount invested consistently for long enough doesn't just grow linearly, it accelerates. Consistent behavior works exactly the same way. The first month of a new habit produces modest results. The 6th month produces noticeably more. The 2nd year produces something that looks almost nothing like where you started. Not because you tried harder or found a secret technique, but simply because the consistent compounding of daily aligned behavior has had enough time to do what it does. This is why the people who achieve genuinely extraordinary results in their lives, the people who seem to have transformed in ways that feel almost magical from the outside, are rarely the people who tried the hardest. They're the people who stayed the longest. They understood that the game is not won in the first quarter. It's won by staying on the field long enough for the compounding to kick in. And compounding, by its very nature, is invisible in the early stages. You don't see it building. You don't feel it accumulating. Until one day, and there always is one day, if you stay with it long enough, you look back at where you started and you genuinely cannot believe how far the consistent, quiet, unremarkable daily effort has carried you. That day is coming for you. I believe that completely. But it requires something from you in the meantime. The willingness to stay in the game when the scoreboard doesn't yet reflect the work you're putting in. When the system needs adjusting versus when you need to persist. This is an important distinction because I don't want to give you the impression that staying with your system means never changing it. Sometimes the right response to slow results is adjustment, not pure persistence. So, how do you know the difference? Ask yourself this question honestly. Is the system not working, or am I not giving the system enough time? If you've been consistently following your system for less than 60 to 90 days, if you haven't truly given it a fair, honest, sustained run, the answer is almost certainly that you need more time, not a different system. The discomfort you're feeling is likely the natural resistance that comes with building something new, not evidence that what you're building is wrong. But if you've genuinely followed a system for several months and something specific isn't fitting, if a particular habit creates more friction than it relieves, if a specific structure doesn't match your actual life, if something that seemed right when you designed it has revealed itself to be misaligned with who you actually are, then adjustment is wisdom, not weakness. The key difference is this: adjustments should be made thoughtfully and specifically, targeting what genuinely isn't working. They should not be wholesale abandonments of the entire system driven by impatience or discouragement. Change the parts that need changing, but don't throw away the foundation simply because the building isn't finished yet. A letter to the version of you that wants to quit. I want to speak directly to that part of you, the part that's tired, that's discouraged, that has been doing the work and not yet seeing the results, and is genuinely wondering whether any of this is worth it. I hear you, I really do. And I'm not going to tell you that it's easy or that you should just push harder or that motivation is all you need, because none of that is true, and you deserve better than empty encouragement. What I will tell you is this: the fact that you're still here, still reading, still thinking about this, still trying to figure out how to build a better life, means something. It means the part of you that knows you're capable of more is still alive, still fighting, still reaching. Don't silence that part. Don't let the discouragement of slow results convince you that the effort isn't worth making. Because on the other side of this slow stretch, on the other side of the months where progress was invisible and doubt was loud and showing up felt thankless, there is a version of your life that was built by the exact choices you're making right now. You won't see it yet, but it's being built, brick by brick, day by day, choice by ordinary, unremarkable, quietly heroic choice. Stay with it, not because it's easy, but because you, the real you, the one who started this journey for a real reason, are worth staying with. Keep going. Chapter 10. Let your habits speak louder than your goals. We've come a long way together, and before we get into this final chapter, before we talk about habits and proof and the quiet power of consistent behavior, I want to take just a moment to acknowledge something. The fact that you're here at the end of this journey means something real. It means you didn't just skim the surface. You stayed, you thought, you engaged with ideas that asked something of you. Not just your attention, but your honesty. Your willingness to look at your own patterns without flinching. Your openness to building something new, even when building is harder and slower and less glamorous than you might have hoped. That matters. That is itself a form of evidence. Evidence that the version of you who wants to live differently is stronger than the version who is comfortable staying the same. Now let's talk about what happens next. Because finishing this book is not the destination. It's the doorway. And what you walk through that doorway into, the life that's waiting on the other side, will not be built by what you've read here. It will be built by what you do from here, specifically by what you repeat. The gap between knowing and living. Here's something I want to say with genuine care because I think it's one of the most important things in this entire book. Knowing what to do is not the same as doing it, and doing it once is not the same as becoming it. Most people who read books like this, who engage with ideas about habits and systems and personal growth, already know on an intellectual level most of what they've read. They know they should move their bodies regularly. They know they should protect their sleep. They know they should spend their time on things that actually matter. They know they should build structure into their days and reduce the noise and show up consistently even when they don't feel like it. They know. And yet the gap between knowing and living, between understanding a principle and having it actually woven into the fabric of your daily existence, is the gap where most people's transformation stalls. That gap is not closed by more knowledge. It is not closed by more inspiration. It is not closed by reading another book or listening to another podcast or writing another set of goals in another fresh journal. It is closed by one thing only: behavior that becomes habit, that becomes identity. It is closed by doing the thing, the specific, concrete, aligned thing, often enough and consistently enough that it stops being something you choose and starts being something you simply are. And that process, the process of turning chosen behavior into automatic identity, is not fast. But it is the most worthwhile thing you can spend your time and energy on. Because it changes not just what you do, it changes who you are. And who you are changes everything. What your habits actually say about you. Here's a practice I want to invite you into. An honest, unflinching one. Forget for a moment everything you've said you want, every goal you've written down, every intention you've declared, every version of your future self you've described to yourself or to someone else. Set all of that aside and look only at what you actually do every day, without exception. What does the first hour of your morning look like? When you're not trying to be impressive, when nobody's watching, when it's just you and your habits? What do you reach for when you're stressed or bored or overwhelmed? Where does your time actually go during the hours you're not obligated to anyone else? What do you do with your money when you're not thinking carefully about it? How do you treat your body when discipline isn't being monitored? How do you talk to yourself in the quiet moments between tasks? What you'll find in that honest audit is not a picture of your goals. It's a picture of your current identity, of who you actually are right now in the raw reality of your daily life. Not who you aspire to be, but who your habits are currently building. And here's the thing, there's no judgment in that picture, just information. Crucially important information about the distance between where you are and where you want to be, and specifically about which behaviors need to change to close that distance. Because your habits are not just behaviors, they are statements. They are the most honest answer to the question, what do I actually believe about myself and what I deserve? If you believe you deserve health, your daily habits will reflect that belief. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but consistently and genuinely. If you believe you deserve financial stability, your relationship with money will gradually reflect that belief. If you believe you deserve peace, you will build the structures that protect it. And if your habits don't yet reflect what you say you believe, that's not a moral failure. It's a gap between aspiration and identity that hasn't been closed yet. It's an invitation, not a condemnation, to begin the work of alignment. The quiet revolution of daily alignment. I love the phrase daily alignment because it captures something that most productivity language misses entirely. Alignment is not about perfection. It's not about doing everything right or achieving everything you set out to achieve. It's about the direction you're facing and whether what you do every day is pointed toward the person you're trying to become or away from them. A life of daily alignment doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't produce viral moments or overnight transformations. What it produces is something far more valuable and far more rare. A steady, deepening sense of integrity, of living in a way that matches what you believe, of becoming, day by ordinary day, more genuinely yourself. This is what I mean when I say, let your habits speak louder than your goals. Your goals are what you announce. Your habits are what you prove. And proof, consistent, accumulated behavioral proof, is what actually changes a life. Not the announcement, the proof. When you build a habit of moving your body regularly, you don't just improve your physical health. You build evidence that you are someone who takes care of themselves. And that evidence, held in your body, in your confidence, in the way you carry yourself, speaks to every other area of your life. When you build a habit of doing your most important work before you do anything else, you don't just become more productive. You build evidence that you are someone who prioritizes what matters. And that evidence changes how you make decisions, how you spend your time, how you feel about yourself at the end of each day. When you build a habit of ending each day with a moment of reflection, of asking yourself whether you live today in a way you're proud of, you don't just become more self-aware. You build a relationship with yourself that is honest, caring, and genuinely committed to your own growth. And that relationship becomes the foundation of everything else. These are not small things. These are the things that build a life worth living. The person you're becoming. I want to spend a moment on something that often gets overlooked in conversations about habits and systems. The cumulative effect on your sense of self. When you build genuine, lasting habits, when you close the gap between your values and your behavior over months and years of consistent daily effort, you don't just achieve outcomes, you become someone. And becoming someone is a different experience entirely from achieving something. Achievements can be lost. Results can fade. Bodies can change, finances can shift, circumstances can reverse, but the person you've become through the process of building genuine alignment between your values and your behavior, that person is not so easily undone. Because the real product of a life lived with consistent, intentional daily habits is not the external results. It's the internal architecture, the deep structure of who you are, your resilience, your self-belief, your capacity to handle difficulty, your ability to keep showing up when it's hard, built from the thousands of ordinary moments when you chose your system over your comfort. That is who you're building. Not just a better body or a stronger career or a healthier bank account. Yourself. The fullest, most genuine, most capable version of yourself. And that person, once built, shows up differently in every area of life. In relationships, in work, in the way you handle adversity, in the way you treat yourself during the inevitable difficult seasons, in the quiet confidence that comes from knowing, at the deepest level, that you can trust yourself to keep going. That's the real return on investment of everything we've talked about in this book. Not the goals you achieve, the person you become in the process of building them. A final word on starting. I know that finishing a book like this can sometimes produce its own kind of paralysis. The ideas feel big, the change feels significant. The distance between where you are and where you want to be can feel, in the light of everything you've just read, even more visible than it did before. And the temptation, the very human, very understandable temptation, is to wait until you have a plan, until you've figured out the perfect system, until the right moment arrives, until life is a little less busy or a little more stable or a little more ready for the kind of intentional building we've been talking about. Please don't wait. Not because urgency is the right energy for this work. It isn't. This work is slow and steady and patient, not urgent and intense and desperate. But because there is no perfect moment, there is no day when everything is aligned and the conditions are ideal and the resistance is low and the path is completely clear. That day doesn't exist. It never has. And waiting for it is the most expensive form of procrastination there is. The right moment is always only this one. Not tomorrow, not Monday, not the first of next month. This moment, the one you're in right now, with all its imperfection and incompleteness and beautiful ordinariness. Start here. Start small. Start with one thing, the smallest, most concrete, most immediately actionable thing you can think of that moves you one step closer to alignment between your values and your behavior. Make your bed. Drink a glass of water. Write down 2 priorities for tomorrow. Take a 10-minute walk. Sit quietly for 5 minutes without your phone. Do one thing you've been avoiding. Say one honest thing to yourself. One thing. Today. In this moment. That's the system beginning. That's the habit forming its first fragile shape. That's the person you're becoming taking their first step. And then tomorrow, not with intensity, not with pressure, not with the weight of everything you want to eventually become. You do one thing again, and then the next day, and the next, until the days add up, until the habits take hold, until the system becomes so woven into the fabric of your life that you stop thinking of it as something you're doing and start experiencing it as simply who you are. The life that's waiting. I want to close with this, and I want you to really hear it, not as motivation, but as truth. The life you want is not somewhere else. It's not waiting for you at the end of some distant achievement or some future season when everything is finally in order. It's being built right now, in what you choose, in what you repeat, in the quiet, ordinary daily actions that no one celebrates and everyone underestimates. It's in the morning you protect, the habits you honor, the system you return to when life gets hard, the version of yourself you keep choosing day after day with imperfect consistency and genuine intention. That's where the life is, not in the goal, in the daily, not in the declaration, in the doing, not in the plan, in the person you're becoming by living it. Your habits are speaking right now. They're telling a story about who you are and what you believe and what kind of life you're building. Make sure it's the story you actually want to live, and then live it. Not someday, not eventually, not when everything is perfect. Now, one choice, one habit, one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. That's the system. That's the life. That's everything.